Hello, this is the Week 4 Assignment, Data Patterns, and Capstone Update. A migration to a centralized system that accounts for over 12,800 Dunkin' restaurants' specific data would help cultivate data-driven decisions. During the fiscal year 2017-2018, Dunkin' had to cut its menu by 10% due to seasonal menu changes that were consistent throughout global locations, which cost overall sales and profit. Customer survey scores were low, griping about inconsistency from the patrons. Moving to a system that is governed by Dunkin' Brands Group Incorporated, interacted and further developed by respective franchises, will promote a unified front and solve the inconsistency issue with menu changes and pricing that occur due to seasonal changes. For this specific effort, the data will focus on the Dunkin' locations specifically within the USA. What is the value of data? The value of data can be defined by many different variables, one of which that is crucial to the restaurant or leisure industries where a customer currently has the ability to spend on items or goods that are non-essential. That is the value of customer data. Quoted here, your customers expect you to know who they are, but how well you could do that if you suffered a data loss. More than just a record of receipts, the value of company data includes knowing what was done, when, where, and how. A more complex look at this specific quote is the defining variable in this specific situation is that consumers had a myriad of issues across the U.S. about how the changes of Dunkin' menus affected their everyday expectations and routines. For example, if you headed to a Dunkin' in the morning on your way to work for a seasonal item like pumpkin spice latte, which runs from usually August to the end of November, that would throw off a customer's expectation if the item wasn't available in early November due to their relevant location in the U.S. It might be a little different if you're at a Dunkin' in Florida versus a Dunkin' in the New England area. Using historical consumer surveys and social media, situations like this would be far less often. Furthermore, the idea of a consumer foregoing their Dunkin' stop every morning for a direct competitor like Starbucks, that would compound the situation. Quoted on the right, the MIT Sloan Review of Data and its worth described a situation where making valuation policies explicit and shareable across a company would increase desire to assess where in the organization the volume of data was growing rapidly and to examine closely the cost and the value of the growth. Trends, the relevant feature of the data. The trends that I observed were in line with the menu issues associated with the seasonal changes from fiscal year 17 and 18. Utilizing the QSR score, which you can see on the left-hand side for 17 and 18 year, you can see a small drop in their ranking from 7 to 8. Also, the net income attributable to the Dunkin' brand shows a similar drop utilized in the graph. This trend indicates something forced a nationally recognized magazine inquirer to lower the ranking of Dunkin' and compared that to the SEC filing of the financial balance sheets. They show uniformity in the issues Dunkin' faced during this time. Clustering. Clustering is appropriate. With the menu changes across the country not being consistent, the data needs to have the association of what seasonal menu changes will be implemented, at what time of the year, and where exactly that will occur. The figures to the left or in front of you depict how the association of the data would need to be set up in order to better foster consistency of menu changes throughout the U.S. and how each state could be filtered for display purposes to accurately show when menu items are relevant for any given period of time. So as you can see, you have the location left on the list on the left, and you can have the state selection with a simple slider. But you also have the data association that this was made up. This was not available for me. This is something I came up with where we can associate the data from what the menu item might be, the location where it was going to be implemented, the start date, and the start finish or the date finish for the specific item. And you would tie that to this table, the USA location, to state. And we'll discuss this further. Correlations. These correlations are spatial and temporal. Spatial temporal is used in data analysis when data is collected across both space and time. It describes a phenomenon at a certain location and time, for example, shipping movements across a geographic area over time. With menu items affecting specific locations based on the time of year and duration of time that an item is available, the correlations for Dunkin' are present for spatial and temporal. Again, I couldn't find an accurate list of menu items, so this is an example of what one might look like. So you can see in the different locations, Alabama, Arizona, and Massachusetts. The menu item, pumpkin spice latte, has two different start dates for the Alabama and Arizona locations versus the Massachusetts location. They all end up both having the same end date. Network analysis. Network analysis can be used with social media, things such as Twitter. A simple search utilizing the Twitter platform can reveal just how impactful social media can be, or at least how informative it can be on a given change. Utilizing filters to the right of the page, you can see that a user can show where, anywhere, or near you for location purposes. Okay, this truly dictates how menu items are affected spatially. Social media trends on Twitter can help identify what might have changed if consumers are enjoying the switch in the majority, or if the majority are having a hard time adjusting to the new favorite limited time item not being available, like they anticipated it would be. If the topic is discussed enough, it can trend in terms used within Twitter, which can then be shown to users when they first log in and do a simple search for the latest and greatest news being discussed on the platform. Here's an example of a Twitter screenshot of the things that happen to be trending on the given dates on the left-hand side. Trends. The trends that emerged happen to be, they presented themselves during the time 2017, 18, and 19. And that's the net income drop. As you can see, it went from 286 to 224 to 237 respectively across the board. The menu changes that occurred during this time frame show how the decision of slightly different menu items resulted in monetary impacts across the Dunkin's brand. Moving forward, the trend for income and revenue loss could be similar to the dip from fiscal year 17 to 19. I use the word could because 19 did see an uptick from fiscal year 18. However, still much lower than the levels seen in fiscal year 17. The probability of the dip occurring because of seasonal menu changes not being consistent throughout the USA are considerably less, with a plan of action in place that would solve this inconsistency and a negative trend. The resources needed to execute a system that allows for a more centralized location for data about menu changes would require a schema that is built in with a new EDM plan and an improved ERP that associated consumer surveys into its reporting so that proper ETL processes can be completed and then dumped into a data warehouse. The projected cost and timeline of an EDM plan would be just under 2 years and an average of $75,000 a year based on an enterprise level. This is from research of IBM, Cloudera, and Teradata that provides ETL, data warehouse, and BI capabilities, all three of which Dunkin' would need. The length of time for the project is based on the projected data migration, implementation, training of new software reporting applications used across all franchises. An international expansion location that I would consider would be in Brazil. Dunkin' currently imports its coffee beans from Central and South America. This would be a great opportunity to have minimal costs of transporting of coffee beans globally, as it could use its very own regional stock, further enhancing profit margins for prospective franchise owners. The political concerns in Brazil have been something that ties itself to the Brazilian currency, as coffee and the real, the Brazilian currency, are usually displayed in tandem. The price globally for Arabica beans coffee goes up with and down with the real currency. Prior to the latest election, real and the coffee prices were falling together, further dropping the consumer paid price of coffee around the world. However, the price and tandem have strengthened since the election of the new president, Jair Bolsonaro. The climate is already a perfect setting in Brazil as it provides rich soil and humidity that coffee plants thrive in. Brazil is one of the countries that produce the Arabica and Robusta beans pictured below. Providing the ability of franchise owners in Brazil to tap the locally grown markets of coffee plants would accentuate the idea of growing the brand of Dunkin'. Currently, there are no known terrorist groups in Brazil. However, organized crime does pose a threat in some of the areas of the country. Typically, in the South American countries, gang activity can be a deterrent to small businesses as organized crime looks to infiltrate the means of operation for business, state security, particularly police personnel, as well. However, despite this, the expanding market of Dunkin' into Brazil still poses tremendous opportunity given that the majority of the beans Dunkin' uses is the exact kind that Brazil mass produces. Thank you very much.